Top 10 side characters hated more than the main villain. Which of these characters made you want to reach through the screen and scream in frustration? Some side characters are so insufferable, cruel, or downright reckless that they outshine the main villain in sheer hateability. From power-hungry bureaucrats to backstabbing traitors, these characters left a lasting mark for all the wrong reasons. Whether through betrayal, arrogance, or sheer malice, they managed to earn the audience's deepest loathing. Think you know who deserves the top spot? Stick around to find out. William Atherton, Walter Peck, Ghostbusters. In Ghostbusters, 1984, supernatural beings like Gozer the Gozerian and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man serve as the film's primary threats. Yet the most despised character isn't a ghost at all. It's Walter Peck, played by William Atherton. Unlike the film's overtly villainous entities, Peck is a human antagonist whose arrogance, incompetence, and bureaucratic meddling make him more infuriating than any spectral menace. Peck, an inspector for the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, arrives at the Ghostbusters headquarters under the pretense of public safety. He demands to inspect their ghost containment unit, but his aggressive approach, dismissive attitude, and refusal to respect the Ghostbusters' expertise immediately paint him as an obstructionist rather than a responsible official. When Dr. Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, refuses his request without a proper warrant, Peck escalates matters by obtaining a court order to shut down the containment system. This decision proves catastrophic. By forcing the release of all captured ghosts into the city, Peck directly causes the supernatural crisis that follows. Instead of preventing harm, his actions make him complicit in the chaos that unleashes Gozer's destructive reign. His unwillingness to acknowledge his role in the disaster only amplifies audience frustration. Walter Peck's character is a classic example of bureaucratic overreach, where authority is wielded recklessly without understanding or accountability. His character became so reviled that actor William Atherton reportedly faced real-life backlash from fans, with people insulting him in public. Atherton would go on to play similarly detestable bureaucratic figures in Die Hard, 1988, and Real Genius, 1985, further cementing his reputation as Hollywood's go-to actor for smug authority figures. Decades later, Peck's return in Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, 2024, now as the mayor of New York City, suggests that his disdain for the Ghostbusters, and audience's hatred for him, has only grown stronger over time. Murray Hamilton, Mayor Larry Von Jaws. In Jaws, 1975, the most obvious threat to the town of Amity is the monstrous great white shark that lurks beneath the surface, killing unsuspecting swimmers. Yet to many audiences, the real villain isn't the shark, it's Mayor Larry Vaughn, played by Murray Hamilton. Unlike the shark, which follows its natural instincts, Vaughn makes conscious decisions that put people in harm's way, making him more detestable than the creature itself. Vaughn, as the mayor of a beachside town reliant on summer tourism, is initially portrayed as a pragmatic leader who must balance public safety with economic concerns. However, as evidence of a dangerous shark attack grows, his refusal to act turns from ignorance to outright negligence. When Police Chief Martin Brody, Roy Scheider, urges him to close the beaches after a young boy is killed in a brutal shark attack, Vaughn downplays the threat, fearing that shutting down tourism during the lucrative 4th of July weekend will financially cripple the town. He pressures the medical examiner to change the official cause of death, turning what should have been a moment of decisive leadership into a political cover-up. His arrogance and greed escalate the crisis when he insists that the beaches remain open, despite growing concerns from Brody and marine biologist Matt Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss. Even after another fatal attack, Vaughn remains stubbornly in denial. His disastrous decision-making culminates in a horrifying scene where a massive shark attacks a crowded beach, proving that his choices have cost multiple lives. It isn't until he sees the remains of the latest victim, a man killed right in front of him, that Vaughn finally acknowledges the gravity of the situation, far too late. What makes Vaughn so universally hated is that he embodies the kind of short-sighted, self-serving leadership that prioritizes profit over people. Unlike a traditional villain who intentionally causes harm, Vaughn's brand of villainy is rooted in cowardice, incompetence, and an unwillingness to take responsibility. His failure to listen to experts and act decisively turns a preventable crisis into a full-scale disaster. Murray Hamilton's performance made Vaughn one of the most despised authority figures in film history. His character was so loathed that he returned in Jaws 2, 1978, where, despite the traumatic events of the first film, he once again downplays the shark threat. Even decades later, Mayor Vaughn remains a perfect example of how human arrogance and greed can be more dangerous than any monster lurking in the water. Daryl Hannah L. Driver Kill Bill. L. Driver, portrayed by Daryl Hannah, stands out as one of the most ruthless and sadistic characters in Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. While Bill serves as the mastermind behind the bride's suffering, Elle operates with a uniquely personal cruelty that makes her even more detestable. Unlike some of Bill's other assassins, who show moments of honor or remorse, Elle delights in the suffering of others, making her the most loathsome member of the deadly Viper assassination squad. Her hatred for Beatrix Kiddo Uma Thurman isn't just professional, it's deeply personal. From the moment she is introduced, whistling eerily down a hospital hallway in preparation to murder Beatrix in her coma, her sadism is undeniable. Only a last-minute phone call from Bill stops her from carrying out the killing, and her frustration at being denied that moment makes it clear that her motivation isn't just about loyalty, it's about rivalry. Elle's treachery extends beyond Beatrix. She poisons her own mentor, Pai Mei, the legendary martial arts master, who trained both women, simply because he once plucked out her eye in punishment for her arrogance. This act of pure vengeance proves that her cruelty knows no bounds, removing any chance of redemption. The showdown between Elle and Beatrix is one of the most satisfying confrontations in the series. Unlike the other deadly Vipers, who are taken out with swords or quick kills, Elle suffers poetic justice when Beatrix plucks out her remaining eye, leaving her blind and screaming in a trailer with a deadly black mamba. While Bill is ultimately a more calculated and controlled antagonist, Elle's reckless malice and betrayal make her a character that audiences love to hate. Christopher Guest Count Ruggin the Princess Bride. Few characters embody calculated cruelty like Count Ruggin, played by Christopher Guest. While Prince Humperdinck is the primary antagonist of The Princess Bride, Ruggin is the true architect of pain, serving as his right-hand man, and the force behind some of the film's most unforgivable acts. His defining moment of villainy comes long before the events of the story, when he murders the father of Inigo Montoya, Mandy Patinkin, in cold blood. Not content with a simple kill, he scars young Inigo's face and leaves him alive, reveling in the knowledge that the boy will spend his entire life seeking revenge. His sheer arrogance is what makes him so despicable. He barely remembers Inigo when they finally meet again, despite the fact that Inigo has dedicated his life to avenging his father's death. Beyond his history with Inigo, Ruggin also serves as the mastermind behind the torture of Wesley Cary Elwes. As the creator of the machine, a device designed to extract years of life through sheer agony, Ruggin approaches his sadistic work with the detached curiosity of a scientist conducting an experiment. He even takes notes on Wesley's suffering, treating human torment as nothing more than an academic pursuit. Unlike Prince Humperdinck, who is more of a scheming coward, Ruggin is a genuinely sadistic villain who enjoys inflicting pain for its own sake. His eventual death at the hands of Inigo Montoya is one of the most satisfying moments in the film, with every repeated utterance of, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die," serving as a well-earned justice. His cold detachment, lack of remorse, and delight in the suffering of others make Count Ruggin far more hated than the so-called main villain. Alfie Allen, Isf Tarasov John Wick. Isf Tarasov, played by Alfie Allen, is the catalyst for the relentless chaos that unfolds in John Wick. While the main villain Viggo Tarasov operates as a seasoned crime lord bound by the codes of the underworld, his son Isf is nothing more than a spoiled, reckless thug whose impulsive actions bring ruin upon his entire organization. His arrogance, entitlement, and sheer lack of foresight make him more despised than any high-ranking crime boss. The chain of events begins when Isf encounters John Wick, Keanu Reeves, at a gas station and decides he wants to buy his 1969 Ford Mustang. When John refuses, Isf reacts with petulant rage, breaking into Wick's home with a group of henchmen, brutally beating him, and killing his dog, a final gift from his recently deceased wife. This act, meant as a petty display of dominance, is not only cruel but catastrophically foolish. Unlike his father, who understands exactly who John Wick is, Isf is completely ignorant of the deadly force he has provoked. He doesn't just attack a random man. He awakens Baba Yaga, the boogeyman of the criminal world. Even after learning the truth, he remains cowardly and dismissive, hiding behind his father's power rather than facing the consequences of his actions. What makes Isf particularly despicable is his utter lack of remorse. He never acknowledges the gravity of his mistake or shows any sign of regret. Instead, he continues to mock the situation, believing his father's influence can shield him from retribution. His arrogance makes his eventual death not just inevitable, but deeply satisfying. Unlike more complex villains with grand ambitions or personal philosophies, Isf is the embodiment of careless privilege. He destroys lives for his own amusement, and in doing so, sets off a storm of violence that consumes his entire family. He may not be the mastermind behind John Wick's suffering, but his actions make him the most despised character in the film. Kurtwood Smith Clarence J. Boddicker, RoboCop. Clarence J. Boddicker, portrayed by Kurtwood Smith, is one of the most sadistic and remorseless villains of 1980s cinema. While RoboCop presents the corrupt megacorporation OCP as the overarching antagonist, Boddicker serves as the film's true face of evil, a ruthless enforcer who thrives on chaos and suffering. Unlike corporate villains who operate from the shadows, he actively enjoys the violence he inflicts, making him a far more visceral and detestable character. From his first scene, Boddicker establishes himself as more than just a typical gang leader. He doesn't just kill his enemies, he tortures them, humiliates them, and takes pleasure in their suffering. His brutal execution of Officer Alex Murphy, Peter Weller, is one of the most disturbing moments in the film, as he and his gang sadistically mutilate Murphy before delivering the final shot. His sheer enjoyment of the act makes it one of the most horrifying and unforgettable villain moments in cinema history. Unlike many crime bosses who maintain an air of professionalism, Boddicker is completely unhinged. He isn't motivated by money, power, or ideology. He simply enjoys destruction. Whether taunting police officers, betraying his own allies, or murdering for amusement, every action he takes is drenched in malice. His unpredictable nature makes him even more terrifying, as there is no reasoning with a man who thrives on anarchy. What sets Boddicker apart from other villains is his blend of sadism and intelligence. He may be a violent sociopath, but he is also cunning, manipulative, and well-connected. His alliance with OCP executive Dick Jones, Ronnie Cox, allows him to operate with near-total impunity, making him even more dangerous. Even as he carries out the dirtiest work imaginable, he maintains a level of smug arrogance, reveling in the power he holds over the city. Jon Noble Denethor, the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Denethor, portrayed by Jon Noble, is not a traditional villain, yet his actions in The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King make him more reviled than even Sauron himself. As the steward of Gondor, he is entrusted with leading the realm in its time of greatest peril. Yet instead of acting as a noble protector, he succumbs to despair, arrogance, and outright cruelty. His failures as a leader and as a father make him one of the most detestable characters in the entire saga. Despite being in a position of power, Denethor is a man broken by his own insecurities. He lacks the strength to wield authority wisely, and is completely consumed by his obsession with maintaining control over Gondor. Unlike Theoden of Rohan, who rises from despair to lead his people with courage, Denethor retreats into paranoia and self-pity, rejecting the help of those who could save his kingdom. His hatred for Aragorn, whom he sees as a threat to his rule, blinds him to the greater danger posed by Sauron. His cruelty is most evident in his treatment of his own sons. Denethor openly favors Boromir over Faramir, making no attempt to hide his disdain for his younger son. Even after Boromir's death, instead of mourning both his sons equally, He laments only the loss of Boromir and treats Faramir as an unworthy replacement. When Faramir, desperate to earn his father's approval, rides out on a hopeless mission to retake Osgiliath, Denethor all but sentences him to death. His reaction upon seeing his son's wounded body, declaring him dead while he is still breathing, is one of the most chilling moments in the film. Denethor's complete surrender to despair is what makes him more hated than Sauron himself. While Sauron is a purely evil entity, Denethor is a man with free will who chooses cowardice and cruelty. His refusal to defend his own city, his rejection of Gandalf's counsel, and his final act, attempting to burn himself and Faramir alive, prove that he is a man who has already lost the battle within himself. His fiery end is a fitting one, a tragic yet satisfying conclusion to a character whose failures nearly cost Gondor everything. Paul Reiser, Carter Burke, Aliens. Carter Burke, played by Paul Reiser, stands out as one of the most loathsome villains in the Aliens franchise. Not because he is the most dangerous, but because he is the most selfish. While the xenomorphs serve as the primary physical threat, Burke is a reminder that human greed and betrayal can be just as deadly. Unlike the alien queen, who is simply acting on instinct, Burke knowingly sacrifices innocent lives for personal profit, making him even more detestable. As a company representative of Weyland-Yutani, Burke presents himself as an ally to Ellen Ripley, Sigourney Weaver, when she is discovered in hypersleep after the events of Alien. At first, he seems helpful, advocating for Ripley's reinstatement and appearing sympathetic to her trauma. However, it quickly becomes clear that his true motivations have nothing to do with protecting human life, and everything to do with acquiring a xenomorph specimen for corporate gain. His most unforgivable act comes when he deliberately sends colonists to investigate the derelict ship, fully aware of the danger. His cold willingness to sacrifice civilians, including families with children, reveals his utter lack of conscience. Even worse, when the mission goes awry, he attempts to cover his tracks, not by admitting his mistake, but by trying to eliminate Ripley and Newt. In a horrifying scene, he releases two facehuggers into a locked room, intending for them to impregnate his crewmates so that he can smuggle alien embryos back to Earth. The sheer level of cowardice and treachery in this moment solidifies him as one of the most despicable human villains in sci-fi history. Unlike the xenomorphs, who kill because it is their nature, Burke kills for profit. His betrayal is driven not by desperation, but by calculated greed. He doesn't see the aliens as a threat, only as an opportunity for financial gain, no matter the human cost. This makes his inevitable fate all the more satisfying. When the time comes, he meets a fitting end, abandoned to the very creatures he sought to exploit. While his death occurs off-screen, the idea of him being torn apart by xenomorphs is a fate far more poetic than any direct execution. Joe Pantoliano, Cypher, The Matrix. Cypher, the betrayer within the ranks of the Nebuchadnezzar, embodies treachery in its purest form. While Agent Smith and the machines are the obvious antagonists of the Matrix, Cypher's deception and self-serving actions make him far more despised. His betrayal isn't just an act of desperation, it's a conscious choice driven by selfishness and resentment, making him far more detestable than the programs enforcing humanity's enslavement. A member of Morpheus' crew, Cypher has spent years fighting against the machines, living in the harsh reality outside the Matrix. Instead of embracing the cause, he grows to resent it, yearning for the comfort and illusion of the world he once knew. His bitterness festers into a dangerous level of jealousy, especially toward Neo, whom he sees as undeserving of the attention and belief Morpheus has placed in him. His defining moment of treachery comes when he secretly conspires with Agent Smith. In exchange for betraying his crew, he demands to be reinserted into the Matrix, wealthy and ignorant of his past life. His willingness to sell out his friends for personal comfort exposes his complete lack of morality. When the time comes to act, he takes a perverse pleasure in eliminating his crewmates one by one, unplugging them from the real world while they are defenseless. His casual demeanor as he murders people he has lived and fought alongside makes him truly detestable. Cypher's betrayal stings because it represents the weakness within humanity. He has no grand ideology, no tragic backstory, no justifiable reason for his actions beyond his own selfish desires. Even as he carries out his plan, he is smug and self-righteous, believing himself to be the only one who sees things clearly. His arrogance blinds him to his own insignificance in the eyes of the machines, and his demise at the hands of Tank is both swift and satisfying. Johnny Russo. Carlo Rizzi, The Godfather. Carlo Rizzi enters The Godfather as an outsider marrying into the Corleone family, but his weakness, ambition, and cruelty lead him down a path that ends in betrayal. While the other antagonists in the film operate within the world of organized crime, with a clear sense of power and hierarchy, Carlo takes a different route, using his position to manipulate, abuse, and ultimately sell out the people closest to him. From the start, Carlo lacks the respect and discipline required to be part of the Corleone inner circle. He marries Connie Corleone, the daughter of Vito Corleone, yet instead of honoring that position, he resents his lack of authority. His insecurity turns into hostility, and his frustrations are taken out on Connie through physical abuse. His mistreatment of her isn't just personal cruelty. It's part of a larger scheme to gain favor with rival mobsters who see his weakness as an opportunity. His betrayal reaches its peak when he conspires with the Corleone's enemies to set up Sonny Corleone. Knowing full well that Sonny is protective of his sister, Carlo deliberately beats Connie, provoking Sonny into an impulsive reaction. As expected, Sonny rushes out in a blind rage, unaware that he is heading straight into an ambush. The brutal assassination at the toll booth is a direct result of Carlo's actions, making him responsible for one of the most devastating losses in the film. Carlo's downfall is inevitable. Michael Corleone, calculating and methodical, waits until the right moment to exact justice. When Michael confronts Carlo, there is a brief glimmer of hope that he might be spared, but that hope quickly fades. His execution, strangled in the front seat of a car, is delivered with cold precision, a fitting punishment for his treachery. What makes Carlo's betrayal unforgivable is its deeply personal nature. He isn't a rival gangster or an enemy seeking revenge, he is family. Given every opportunity to live a life of comfort and security under the protection of the Corleones, he chooses greed and resentment over loyalty. His actions don't just hurt the business, they shatter the family from within. Ronald Lacey, Major Arnold Todt, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Arnold Todt, the sadistic Gestapo agent in Raiders of the Lost Ark, stands out as a villain who relishes cruelty. While the Nazis as a whole serve as the overarching threat, Todt is the personal embodiment of their sinister nature. His presence is unsettling from the moment he appears, with his skeletal frame, black trench coat, and eerie smile setting the stage for his relentless pursuit of the Ark of the Covenant. Unlike Colonel Dietrich, who operates with a more traditional sense of military command, Todt enjoys the suffering he inflicts. His introduction in Nepal, where he confronts Marion Ravenwood, immediately establishes him as a character devoid of humanity. He arrives demanding the headpiece of the staff of RA, and does not hesitate to use violence, ordering the burning of Marion's tavern and preparing to torture her with a heated iron poker. The way he calmly watches the destruction unfold, completely unbothered, makes it clear that his allegiance to the Nazi cause is not just about duty, it's about power and sadism. His interactions with Indiana Jones are filled with a smug sense of superiority. He believes himself untouchable, fully confident that he will recover the Ark for Hitler. When faced with setbacks, he never loses his cold, calculating demeanor, always lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. His cruelty isn't just in his actions, but in the sheer delight he takes in them. Despite his cunning, Todt meets a fate that perfectly matches his nature. When the Ark is finally opened, and its supernatural power is unleashed, his smug confidence vanishes in an instant. The horrifying spectacle of his face melting as divine wrath consumes him is one of the most unforgettable death scenes in film history. His demise isn't just satisfying, it's a moment of poetic justice, proving that no matter how much power or control he thought he had, he was ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Clancy Brown, Captain Byron Hadley, The Shawshank Redemption. Byron Hadley, the brutal captain of Shawshank Prison's guards, is a character whose cruelty and abuse of power make him one of the most despised figures in The Shawshank Redemption. While Warden Samuel Norton is the film's primary antagonist, operating with a corrupt but calculated mind, Hadley is the enforcer, the man who carries out the physical brutality that keeps Shawshank's prisoners in constant fear. His unchecked aggression and willingness to kill without remorse make him even more detestable than the manipulative warden he serves. Hadley is introduced as a man who rules through intimidation and violence. His first significant act in the film is beating a newly arrived prisoner to death for crying on his first night, setting the tone for his complete lack of humanity. He doesn't see the men under his watch as people, only as bodies to control through force. His authority is absolute, and he wields it with a sadistic pleasure, knowing that no one will hold him accountable. His relationship with Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins, evolves from hostility to reluctant dependence. When Andy offers to help Hadley legally shelter his inheritance money from taxes, Hadley's demeanor shifts, but only in a self-serving way. He doesn't suddenly gain respect for Andy, he simply sees him as useful. Even after benefiting from Andy's financial expertise, Hadley remains a violent, remorseless thug, continuing to brutalize prisoners at every opportunity. One of his worst moments comes when he assists in the murder of Tommy Williams, a young inmate who could have proven Andy's innocence. Under the warden's orders, Hadley carries out the execution without hesitation, further proving that he has no conscience, only blind loyalty to the corrupt system he upholds. Hadley's downfall is one of the film's most satisfying moments. When Andy's years-long escape plan is finally revealed, it not only exposes the warden's corruption, but also leads to Hadley's long-overdue arrest. The once untouchable enforcer is last seen being led away in handcuffs, a stark contrast to the feared man who once terrorized the prison. His fate is fitting, not a dramatic death, but the slow, humiliating process of facing the very justice he denied so many others. Imelda Staunton, Dolores Umbridge, Harry Potter franchise. Dolores Umbridge is a character whose very presence incites an almost universal sense of revulsion. While Lord Voldemort serves as the overarching villain of the Harry Potter franchise, embodying pure evil and terror, Umbridge represents a more insidious kind of cruelty, the kind that disguises itself under a mask of order, righteousness, and authority. Her brand of villainy isn't driven by a hunger for power on a grand scale, but rather by an obsessive need for control, an utter lack of empathy, and an enjoyment of wielding power over others simply because she can. Her introduction as the senior undersecretary to the Minister of Magic immediately establishes her as a representative of the ministry's growing corruption. With her pastel pink outfits, sugary sweet voice, and an ever-present condescending smile, she outwardly presents herself as polite and proper. However, beneath that exterior lies an individual whose bureaucratic tyranny and sadistic punishments make her one of the most loathed figures in the series. Her reign as Hogwarts' defense against the dark arts professor is where her true nature fully emerges. She systematically dismantles the school's learning environment, enforcing rigid, outdated ministry policies, and suppressing any attempts by students to learn practical defense against the very real threat of Voldemort. Her desire to control extends beyond academics. She implements harsh disciplinary measures, uses fear to maintain order, and even refuses to acknowledge the reality of external dangers simply because they do not align with her agenda. One of her most sadistic moments comes in the form of her detentions, where she forces students to write lines with a cursed quill that carves the words into their flesh. Her delight in watching others suffer, particularly when she punishes Harry Potter for telling the truth about Voldemort's return, reveals the depths of her cruelty. Unlike Voldemort, who commits atrocities in pursuit of ultimate power, Umbridge inflicts pain simply because she enjoys exerting control over those weaker than her. Her allegiance to the ministry allows her unchecked authority, but even after losing her post at Hogwarts, she resurfaces in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, fully embracing the ministry's descent into totalitarianism. Her role in persecuting Muggleborns under Voldemort's puppet government further cements her status as irredeemable. What makes Umbridge more hated than Voldemort himself is that she is not a distant, abstract evil. She is the kind of villain that exists in real life. She is the embodiment of institutional cruelty, the person who abuses her position not for any noble cause, but because she revels in oppression. Her downfall, though not as dramatic as Voldemort's, is deeply satisfying. Stripped of her authority and sent to Azkaban, she ultimately falls victim to the very system she once upheld. These side characters may not be the main villains, but their actions make them even more despised than the actual antagonists. Whether it's betrayal, cruelty, arrogance, or sheer recklessness, they've earned their place as some of the most hated figures in film history. But now, we want to hear from you. Which of these characters do you think is the absolute worst? Did we miss any that deserve a spot on this list? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps us out. And if you love movie discussions, rankings, and everything Hollywood, make sure to subscribe to All About Hollywood for more amazing content. Ring the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.